Hello, and you are listening to FPcast, the podcast for Fruitless Pursuits, where we bullshit about the week in pop culture. I am Luke.
I'm Jacinta.
And this week we are talking about...
Movies, television, collectibles, video games, comics, books, board games, and more.
Potatoes. Babies.
Family.
That
Yeah.
really is the big one. This week I embraced my fate and watched Fate of the Furious. Part of our kind of, you notice in this, I'm going to do this. And they were like, yeah, well, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to do this. And I feel like it was a similar kind of tense match where you were like, we're going to watch Fate and the Furious. And I was like, yeah, well, we're going to watch Transformers last night. Yeah. And now look at the mess we're in.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we're both going to see those movies, and one of us is going to have a miserable time each time.
That's
So
right.
it's going to even out in the end.
Oh, I know, yeah.
Yeah.
Things do.
fine. Yeah.
That's fine. Well, look, this is what we signed up for. Still part of the show.
We are a team. We do have
yes.
to take a hit sometimes.
Yeah.
All those Scarlett Johansson movies that I had to see was still, I feel the ledger is still in my favour.
Well, yeah, I'm not so sure about that. But big week of news. We'll be talking about the Thor Ragnarok trailer. We'll be talking about, of course, the Star Wars Last Jedi trailer and some of the Star Wars celebration stuff that was happening over the course of the weekend. And then I'm sure there will be some other gubbins as well. In addition,
Is.
yeah, and we were just talking about how we need a new theme song
Because we don't talk about board games. When was the last time we talked about a fucking board game?
or books. We sometimes
I
talk
sometimes
about
talk
books.
about books, but they're usually like picture books that don't really translate very well into the audio medium.
Or collectibles. We barely talk about. I mean,
Because again, it's a thing to look at.
so
Like,
if anybody wants to get us a new theme, have a think about that, or even think about the things that should be said in there instead of the things that are in there, like were though, or diversity. What are the other things we like to harp on about?
Batman vs Superman wasn't even that bad. That bad.
I'm sure there's a lot of things that come up frequently. Speaking of which, we got the Wonder Woman trailer on the big screen today, didn't we?
Such a good trailer.
It is, but I know now she's going up against a big CGI thing at the end.
Yeah, I don't even care. Honestly, I don't. Like, if it's going to be a big CGI thing, like helping Nazis, and then she's going to like smash all the Nazis in the big CGI thing, it's got to be better. Like, I didn't like the end of Captain America First Avenger. It's going to be better than that.
I don't know, but every time someone's gone up against a big CGI thing at the end, no one's been happy.
Well, no one's fucking happy about anything that
That's
DC
true.
does anyway.
That's true.
These people are awful.
Yeah, there were pictures. Won't say any spoilery things beyond there was a Lego set. Not going to describe what was in it, but it shows the final battle and the feeling of maybe a big CGI comic booky threat being in Wonder Woman that was being hidden. Seems to be pretty true. Anyway, look, they're already covering a lot of stuff. Opening theme and Wonder Woman. Done.
We're on a roll. We'll just call it here.
Yeah, that's
call
the
it.
show. I actually had trouble pushing the button. Hopefully I'm going to be okay with the soundboard today because I was using my left hand because my index finger from my needlework lately is just one big callus.
Oh.
Like I don't have a fingerprint.
Oh, you do have a fucking fingerprint.
I don't have a
You are
fingerprint.
So full of
I
shit.
could commit one-fingered crimes and ironically the coppers would never be able to finger me for them because of my lack of fingerprint on this thing. And I'd had
having a callus doesn't mean that you don't have fingerprints.
No, but I know, but in this case,
Okay.
I've definitely...
Oh, okay, so you
Me
personally
specially.
has a special
Yeah.
callus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes and, riffing, etc. So, yeah, and I had a little exchange with Suzanne about it, and I thought it was hilarious. And I put it on Facebook. Just, it was in a comment to something, fair enough. And nobody thought it was but one person liked it.
Okay.
So I feel like maybe it was the delivery. Like
Well,
Facebook.
maybe you're not funny.
Facebook wasn't the yes and riff. Let's roll with this. So I say to Suzanne, like, I need a thimble, and she's like, oh yeah, well, we can probably get one, but maybe up until then you can. And then I go, like a bat, and she goes, what? And I go, I need a thimble to strike fear into the hearts of wicked men. Like Batman. The thimble, but he has a lisp. Can you imagine that? Batman with a lisp, that tough guy? Like Ben Affleck with... Well, let's talk about Thor.
Thor. He's very Thor. He's been like hammering for days. He's so Thor.
And now everybody's onto it. So the Thor Ragnarok, Taika unleashed this thing. And this is doing something very different to what, say, the Last Jedi teaser is doing. Because this is a very generous teaser, would you say? Like,
Oh, yeah.
It shows all the new characters. It shows the Hulk, which was,
I was
something...
not expecting to be seeing that in the first teaser.
So it's very much not keeping much up the sleeve, but going, look, we want to sell you on this thing. We want to show you that this isn't like the Dark World or the first Thor. This is something that's going to be different.
Ragnarokin.
Ragnarok and Roland. And... God, I mean, what can you say about this trailer other than the fact that it is incredibly fun, colourful, effective, and makes you want to see this film?
Yeah, I think that this was probably my most anticipated trailer for the year, like even beyond Star Wars, I think, because it's such an unknown quantity. Like Taika's never done a superhero movie before. It was, so much was going to be different and unique about this movie that I'm so glad that trailer lived up to everything that I was hoping for. It's funny, it's colourful. It showed, like, Jeff Goldblum looks amazing, Cate Blanchett looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with her look.
And I think I texted to you afterwards that I kind of thought I was maybe a little bit, not bored of Loki, but a little bit over it. But that 1 second of him in the trailer, and I just sort of went, oh! And now I'm back. I'm back on board the Loki train, even with his stupid, like, face helmet thing that he's got going on.
Yeah, it's got a great look. I love that they're just committing to everything and they're doing it with a sense of fun. I think, to see Cate Blanchett with the big helmet and everything just looked amazing. I think I never doubted Taika's ability to pull it off. I know there were people saying, oh, well, he hasn't done action, things like that, but I don't think that's what they're looking for. I think that, there are people doing animatics and storyboards and plotting out all the action and what that looks like. Probably even in advance of somebody, being on the table, they're starting to set that stuff up. It's more someone that can then add a sensibility, add fresh ideas, and really be someone that gets that charisma and that chemistry out of the cast. And I think he's the absolute perfect person.
And I think it's going to be
do that.
Amazing for that cast as well, because you're looking like the first one with Kenneth Branagh and everything was very... and kind of Shakespearean and serious and all that sort of thing, and being able to take that same cast and give them that kind of confidence that Taika has that you see through his movies, and just say, well, we're going to do something different and everything's going to be okay. And for them to step into his world.
That said, I think it's a logical progression because I think Branagh certainly wasn't without humour. I think he gave us a very likeable character of Thor, and Thor had quite a bit of comedy around him particularly. But I think what Branagh was able to do, and of course you're always going to bring up Shakespeare when you're talking about Branagh, I think, and there's certainly something in that with how he approached this.
And I think it probably made things a lot easier for Tom Hiddleston coming into that world as well.
Well, he gave it the gravitas. He made the stakes real stakes. He got that, the tears out of Hiddleston and those kind of things that perhaps you weren't expecting, which grounded what was going to be really a ridiculous new thing, Thor. Like, to think of the Iron Man movies and then go, well, how did we go into Asgard from this? How does this mesh together? He was able to ground that fantastic stuff, but at the same, but still committed to it. I was thrilled we still got rainbow bridges and all that sort of bullshit. But then at the same time, Branagh knows, he's got a sense of humor, he knows comedy, he knows, that's a big part of Shakespeare and that approach as well, and he found that. And I think now Marvel's just in such a great spot because you can be so playful. Guardians has just opened up everything, and everything's so character-based that, it looks like he's having a ball.
I know there is a whole bunch of stuff that's not in that teaser. There is some stuff where they do come back to New York, and there's a big whole section in New York, but I guess there's no point showing that in the teaser because that's not as interesting as a fucking gladiator battle.
Yep. And, and there's still, there's only one shot, I think, of Carl Urban in there as the executioner.
And it's not even a very sort of clear shot or anything.
No, and I imagine I would be surprised if there weren't more kind of, even if they're sort of deep cuts, but more Marvel Easter eggs and things once you get into this galactic part. Plus, we know it's got to all eventually tie into Infinity War. We know we have to get, we know Guardians are in that, so there's got to be some sort of crossover thing happening.
I read something the other day that there's going to be 50 or 56 characters, Marvel characters in Infinity War. That's crazy.
Been saying that for a while, but it will definitely bring everybody together. So that was really cool. Excited about that. And then, but I've got to admit, even though Ragnarok's the crowd-pleasing trailer, it's such a no-brainer. It delivers. It's that sort of trailer where it just gets you really hyped and it shows you what you've been wanting to see. I wanted to know what all those things look like, how it works, what we're going to see, and it teases that perfectly. Last Jedi trailer is really early days. It's showing, there's so many characters and things that are not revealed in this. It's really a Rey and Luke trailer for the most part. And it's keeping things very, very close to its chest. But that said, for me, and this thing went live during the Last Jedi panel, which we were able to watch live streaming on Saturday night from about 11 p.m. I've got to admit, I was really excited. Even an hour beforehand, I was starting to get Star Wars giddy. I just love Star Wars that much.
I mean, I love Star Wars too, but I think that panel, once I realised that the people they were bringing out were the only people they were bringing out, was a bit oh, okay, really? And then I liked the trailer, obviously. I did get about halfway through when they had the Luke and Rey stuff, and they were like, this Christmas, and I'm like, is that it? Is that just Luke and fucking Rey? Because I'd like to check in with some other people, thanks trailer. And then they went, oh, okay, and here's everybody else. I'm like, oh, thank God.
I guess though it's the nature of where they left Force Awakens hanging. Is that's your first logical question. It's you can't skip ahead from that moment when we know that what happened on the island, we're going to continue straight from there and we're going to find out.
Oh, yeah, I don't have a problem with the trailer starting with that. I just thought that's all the trailer was going to be.
It plays it close to its chest. We don't see a lot of new things, and I think, when we first saw... But I remember thinking on that very first teaser for Force Awakens, there was part of me that was like, oh, is that it? Because, it's 6 shots or something.
Yeah.
And there was an element of that, and I know that there was some people being underwhelmed, but at the same time, I've also heard lots of people say in the past that really the less Star Wars shows, the better, because everybody's going to see it. You don't need to show a lot. Let us just go in and see it. So, in a way, if we didn't see anything and then went and saw the film, it would be great.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I got after the trailer. I was like, yeah, that's fine. I don't really need to see anything else. Let's just give us the movie.
Plus, I think that, the sorts of things they were showing aren't difficult things for us to imagine. Having, and we've been imagining those things for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
We know what the island looks like. We know what Luke looks like. We know what Rey looks like. So when you see them together training or whatever, it's not something that is unexpected.
I think the most, every character check-in in that trailer is... nothing unexpected. It's where you would expect those characters to be in situations that are not too far removed from where we left them. But the most interesting shot in there for me was the broken Vader helmet.
Yeah.
And that's the bit that got me, because there's a couple of different situations there. Either Kylo has a temper tantrum and breaks it himself. Perhaps he's losing his faith in the dark side, or perhaps somebody else destroys it, or it's destroyed during some kind of battle or something, and then Kylo feels that he has to avenge this thing or something. But that was the most kind of like, ooh, moment in the trailer for me. Everything else was just like, oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that is interesting, especially when you consider the teaser poster and you're getting that.
Luke and Kylo.
Yeah, that sort of dichotomy. And to destroy that is sort of separating yourself from the Skywalker legacy. I feel like it's more that it's a conscious thing, or maybe it's, we know Snoke, we're going to start to find out more about that this time round. That maybe it is something about trying to disassociate his feelings and connection to that past so that he can go forward as a new thing. I think that was interesting that, the panel itself was that kind of bullshit where everyone just says, oh, I had a great time. You're not going to find out anything. But I think the snippets that we got from Rian Johnson and the cast did suggest more of a kind of thoughtful approach, that it was about ideas and relationships. And I feel like there is a chance that this is going to be more of a introspective film. And I mean, obviously, like we can see in the trailer, there's still going to be big action sequences and things. But I mean,
it's the same for Empire, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's more about solidifying those relationships.
And I don't know how Empire could not be the model for this film. I mean, and even just the fact that you've got the teaser posters red is incredibly ominous. And I feel like, and we've said this right from the beginning, this idea that I feel like that adventure and those battles, that's going to be your Poes and your Finns running around doing that stuff. But in terms of Rey, Luke, Kylo, Snoke, that's where we're going to go. Leia even, that's where we're going to go introspective. The family stuff's going to be more important.
There was an article this morning, I think it was an interview with Rian Johnson, saying that you will have a pretty good idea of who Rey's parents are by the end of this one.
I do like, I said this on Facebook, the first shot is an inverse of the first shot in the Force Awakens teaser. So that opened with a landscape and then a sweaty Finn rises into it, and this has a landscape and a sweaty Rey slams down into it. And it's closer in a way, like you realise that thing that you're looking at is a very small area. Finn was about an expanse, and this is about a very small focus thing, and I felt like already that was setting the expectation that we were going sort of inward and kind of deeper with this. I think Star Wars has always been about echoes. I think there's that real reminder when you see Luke in that last shot, and Daisy Ridley, if people didn't see the panel, had said that the one thing she said about that she could reveal was sometimes you shouldn't meet your heroes. So this idea that Luke maybe isn't as keen to continue things on, which is made clear in the teaser.
Which is probably fair enough, coming from where he's come from.
Yeah, and it reminded me, there was something about the way that was filmed in the cave, and it reminded me of the Dagobah stuff. So, I don't know, it got me thinking, I wonder if we'll get a Yoda or an Obi-Wan ghost turn up in this to get that parallel. Because remember, Yoda was like, nah, he's not ready, I'm not going to train him, this is silly. And then the ghost came along and said, hey, look, remember what you were like, remember what's at stake, you've got to do this. And, as much as I'd like to see Ewan McGregor do it, I think they're probably not rushing to CGI over people's faces at the moment after Rogue One. You might maybe do it in makeup, but I think, seeing the Obi-Wan ghost, which we've seen so often, it has to look exactly like the Alec Guinness.
They could probably do a little bit of trickery. They only need to CGI the mouth, surely.
I don't know. Yoda's the easy one, though, isn't he? I mean, Yoda, you don't...
And you could always have, just the shot of him and then, cut to Luke's reaction face while he's talking and...
Yeah. But, so... No, I just realised, I guess, how excited I've been. Because I remember I used to be excited about movies all the time. And obviously we spend a lot of time in our week seeing movies and thinking about movies and talking about movies. But because we're so spoilt now, because you're not waiting for that one like Batman movie every 3 years, and that was it. And now because there's a big franchise movie every week, pretty much, I don't get excited anymore.
Yeah, I know, it is a shame. And it's also, like, we go and see a movie every week.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes, you know, the way you feel about a movie might be the same for 5 movies in a row.
Yeah.
And it's just not, you know, with this other stuff that's coming out, it's hard to feel excited or inspired by a lot of things. So yeah, that is kind of a downside of what we do.
But I remember with Force Awakens, that was the one time even more like Rogue One, I was excited, but I didn't get there. Same with Force Awakens. I remember you and I being at the cinema from about 11 p.m. and going to time zone and stuff and wandering around and just feeling like, oh my God, like I'm getting nervous almost. Like I'm so excited that we're actually going to see this thing. And these saga movies really are hitting that again for me. And I don't think I realized that until like what happened was I was on a site which had the live stream set up and I had it on, but it was just a blank screen with a countdown, and I was watching Netflix in another window, and then suddenly that like celebration music from the end of Jedi just pumped through my headphones while I was watching the Netflix thing. So I turned the Netflix off and there was about 10 minutes of just music going through different themes. And I was just getting excited again. It was just something so ingrained with that music. And even when they were playing like, Duel of the Fates from Phantom Menace, there's still that connection where you just go, holy shit, this is something different and special.
Yeah, I'd thrown it from my iPad to the TV, because I had it on the massive TV in my theatre room. I was sitting on the floor building my little X-Wing Lego, and I'd walked out of the room to go and get a drink or something, and that's when the music kicked in and I went, oh fuck, and I ran back in and there was nothing, it was just the music playing, but I was like, oh, something's gonna happen soon-ish.
And they did, I guess the one thing they did do in the panel, like, there was no brainer that we were going to get Rey and Finn. You could see how many chairs were there. I thought for sure they were going to bring out Kelly Marie Tran as the new person, which they did, and confirm that her character is Rose, who's a Resistance mechanic, was she? Or maintenance person?
Yeah, something like that.
And so she turned up, and then, you're thinking, are we going to get Oscar Isaac, or are we going to get Adam Driver? But we got...
And then they dropped it in, and they just went, oh, Oscar Isaac couldn't be here today. And I was like, oh.
So we got Mark Hamill again. He's
been a busy boy that weekend.
Yeah, so we didn't get much, but I really enjoy seeing Kathleen Kennedy. I think she's such a good person to be in charge of all this. I think she's good for Star Wars.
Yeah, I watched the live feed on, I think it was Thursday night, our time, maybe, opening day, and she came out and did a very, there's just an enthusiasm and confidence to her that is very comforting. Like, it feels like she knows what she's doing, and she's going to take care of everyone.
Yeah, and a degree of, yes. There's a sense of responsibility, custodianship, not necessarily knowing all the answers, not knowing if things are going to work.
She's like a parent.
Yeah,
Parents don't have all the answers, but they're going to do their best.
It's just a big difference from those people which... I don't want to make this about gender, right? It's probably just a coincidence, but we're so used to, in at least the blockbuster kind of arena... whether it's Michael Bay or a Michael Bay wannabe like Brett Ratner or someone, these people that just feel like they know exactly what's right for this thing, and if you don't like it, you didn't get it, and they just keep barreling forward along a trajectory. I don't feel there's that arrogance about Kathleen Kennedy at all. I feel like this is somebody that is making really considered decisions, and is also letting artists be artists, and you can see that by the people. You could see the respect the cast had for Rian Johnson after working with him, and the faith that they had in him, and the respect that they had for his work. So, when you get those sorts of people involved, and you let them really approach something. And then you had also two wonderful stories. I guess this is really, for me, the highlight of the panel is one, Mark Hamill saying that he felt terrified about going into it. And he was telling this to Ryan, how do we get this right? How do we make this work? And he said, I feel terrified too. And that's what put Mark Hamill at ease, because it wasn't someone just going, yeah, we've got this, it's going to be fine. It was like, we have to make this
Like, I care enough that I'm worried about it.
And this is challenging what we're doing. This is a big thing, and, we're going to have to work our asses off to make it work. That felt really good. What was the other What was the other thing?
I don't know.
With Ryan Johnson. Oh, the Carrie Fisher. About him spending that time with her afterwards, spending 4 or 5 hours sitting writing with her and letting her touch up those scripts and stuff. Because I was saying this to you the other day, nobody for me writes Leia and understands how that works like Carrie Fisher. We've seen pictures of her scripts from Empire and stuff. This is, 20-something Carrie Fisher rewriting the dialogue and crossing things out and realizing this isn't necessary, let's say it this way, let's do this. She is so good at that stuff, and her contribution in that way is going to be really sorely missed, because and the fact that, again, there's no arrogance, there's no Carrie, we've got this, I'm writing this. It's they're sitting together working on this stuff after hours and making it better. And listen, and he said sometimes, 4 or 5 hours and you end up with a 4-word line at the end. But how fantastic. So
my favourite bit of the panel was Ryan Johnson showing his photos that he'd taken during filming. He had a little film camera with some black and white film in it, and he showed these photos that he'd taken, and they were just wonderful. There was that one of Anthony Daniels completely in the silhouette with the light behind him.
Yeah.
My favourite one, obviously, the one of Oscar Isaac sitting in his X-Wing with a cup of coffee, looked like it could have been straight from the set of, the films in the 70s.
Yeah.
Like, it was just the aesthetic of that film was just absolutely beautiful.
Well, we didn't really get any of, in the trailer, we don't see Rey with the new hair and the new costume, which would suggest that time does pass from that beginning throughout the film. And that's the Rey that we saw on the action figure packaging. But there was in his photos that one of Rey with the lightsaber standing under the umbrella. I really like that as well. In fact, I don't know, I haven't looked to see if they're online at all, even if they're screen caps from the presentation.
No, I haven't checked. I hope that he, whether he just keep them for himself for his own personal collection. But God, if you put a book together with those photos, my God, I would buy it.
I think they have some of the absolute best archives and archive keeping practices for probably any film, because they understand just how valuable all that stuff is. So, that's one of those great things about Star Wars, if you're into it, is there's no expiry date on that material. It's not like, well, if you don't get that book out about the making of Last Jedi in the first 12 months, then or the first 6 months of release, then you're fucked. Like, you can bring it out 30 years later and people will have pour over it and appreciate
it. The making of the original trilogy ones didn't come out until about 25 years after the movie came out.
Yeah, and there were other things. I mean, we've seen some of that art before. There were art books, and there were the illustrated screenplays that had a lot of the original Ralph McQuarrie art, but their ability to continually repackage their resources I think is pretty unparalleled. And I think, then teaming up with a powerhouse like Disney is... that can only...
And I mean, and it's the best for fans, because you don't need everything, but you can pick and choose, because there's so much out there. You can pick what suits you. Like, I don't necessarily want the illustrated scripts or storyboards or anything like that, but like the photo books and stuff that came out 10 or so years ago, those massive big books, like, they are exactly what I'm into.
To not risk further alienating anyone who's not into Star Wars, shall we do our review of something very different in tone and creation? The Fate of the Furious. I feel like I've got a lot to say here. So do you want to start us off?
Yeah, sure. For 8...
Fate of the Furious.
Fate of the Furious.
I'm hoping the next one will be Fine and the Furious.
Yeah, maybe. The Fine and the Furious.
Where Toretto gets a toupee and starts strutting around with renewed confidence.
Yeah, nice. 8th installment of the Fast and the Furious franchise. The first one completely without Paul Walker.
What a lazy bum. Why didn't he turn up? Did he want more money?
Maybe he wanted his insides on the inside of his body. That's probably something that he would have liked.
That's too fast, too soon.
Man, I was reading some articles about his death because I saw during the week, I sent you a photo of a unicorn that I never thought I would see in the wild. Someone with a memorial Paul Walker sticker on their car. Like,
Right.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
Forever in our hearts. All of this sort of business. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, people putting stickers like that on their high-performance vehicles when really, like, he died because I don't think he was driving. I think it was his friend that was driving. But they were driving like fuckheads.
Yeah.
And they ran into a tree. And they,
The film has that same... this film, after that event, has that same disconnect. Like, this is still about people driving around like fuckheads. As I was sort of saying to you in the car on the way back, I can accept that as a conceit of action movies. I've got no problem with that when you're going, okay, it's an action movie and it's life or death and we've got to save everybody and we're going to drive around the city because we're in a chase, because people are after us, because we're stopping something. When it's got the that sort of bond, like it's a mission and we've got no choice. It's either die or keep going. And of course, you'll see them swerving out of the way of civilians and things, and they do all that stuff in those moments. I can accept that. I think, like, pulling something like that and comparing it to this real world event with Paul Walker is ridiculous and not fair on that situation at all. However, there are times when there is this really crazy reckless driving in this, which is not about that action movie imperative at all. It's just plain fuckheadery, and it's usually it's about ego. I think particularly the first scene of this film, the first sequence, is so tone deaf and so problematic that I just found it really off-putting. And it's a shame because it actually, when the movie continues, it kind of separates away from that a bit. It kind of moves into a Men on a Mission movie and abandons that opening sequence. But that opening sequence for me is fucking horrible.
The opening sequence is, aside from the endangering civilians with no real need, that's probably the closest scene that does hark back to the earliest movies. It was about racing and beating other people at racing and winning their cars.
Yeah, we're going to be spoilery about this first scene. It's a street race.
Yeah, it's just a street race. That's all it is. So you're going to a Fast and Furious movie, you're going to see a street race. And they kick it off very quickly with that. There's not a lot of fluffing around. It literally pretty much goes straight into it.
And it's about ego. But it's so strange because you've got this thing where... One, I think this is a really homoerotic movie. I think this is a lot of stuff with guys faces an inch away from each other, staring in each other's eyes, telling them about how they're going to beat them up or beat them in a race or touch them. I can't think of when I've been in that situation with another man, but... I was so disappointed that, like, if this movie really wanted to be, relevant, progressive, like, Rock and Statham should have been a couple by the end because they want to fuck each other so badly throughout the course of this film. Like,
Well, maybe that's the next movie, Luke. Maybe
that's
just
the Fine and the Furious. Because they are so in love with each other. So there's a lot of that. But then the movie kind of, at the beginning, and only at the beginning, is like that beginning is almost like a colonoscopy montage. It is just up the asses of all these Cuban women in tiny shorts and stuff. And I almost feel like it would be more truthful. And imagine how different this movie would be if it was all shots of men in tiny shorts wiggling their bums in the air. Because I feel like that's what more of the tone of where this movie goes from that point. You've got that woman that starts the race who is wearing like...
Oh, you could see her vulva.
Yeah, like, you can see her entire bum cheek. She's just got this little string in between. The camera's low. It's right up her skirt. And you go, what if that was a man? What if, like, this was a man's showing his entire ass, like showing his little harvest moon there at the beginning to start this race because these two men who have been faces pressed up against each other talking about how they're going to beat each other and how much. But I mean, even The Rock like is up against that guy and does a joke about how big his dick is. Like, you know, these guys really want to fuck each other all the way through. It's such a, I don't know, is it like a right-wing movie though? It's definitely like that kind of outlaw, anti-government, do what's right, America kind of, it's a Jesus-y movie.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been a right-wing series particularly.
Government suspicion.
Yeah, I think it's got a lot of elements in there like that, but I guess most movies, most franchises aren't strictly right or left these days.
But they have this, yeah, but then you think about how split America is. There must be material going for a certain worldview.
Well, yeah, like I watched fucking Patriots Day last night.
Yeah,
I mean, I know who that's leaning towards.
But anyway, you've got this race, and they just drive like completely fucking recklessly through populated city streets. And this is your first no Paul Walker. This is what's happening.
There are measures in place to minimise the damage.
There are, but the thing is, the director is completely at a disconnect with the material that he's putting forward and what he's showing on the screen. I think like the perfect example of this, and this again is getting spoilery about this first scene, but is Toretto is racing towards the finish line. His car is a wreck and it is on fire. And it's going out of control. And it's completely on flames. You can see the crowd standing on either side of the finish line with this flaming, out-of-control wreck coming towards them. And then you see the crowd, they're smiling and they're dancing and cheering. Like,
because he managed to avert the danger and didn't kill them.
You've got a flaming wreck coming towards the crowd. And we see later there are heaps of children in there. And even when the car then veers off to the side and explodes, you see this shower of flaming CGI debris about to rain down on the crowd. Then the camera cuts away, and then it cuts back, and they're on a street with just a couple of little bits and pieces, no fire or anything, and everybody's fine.
Yeah.
Like, he has killed everybody. Like, nobody's... You know, you see... I know people go and watch NASCAR, and when a flaming car is, like, swerving towards the crowd, I mean, even just... And I'm not even... I know it's a movie, but surely because it's a movie, you want to ratchet up the tension. You want to ratchet up the danger. You don't do that when everybody's, like, just looking and dancing and wearing the little shorty shorts. If they had that moment of, oh, fuck, we got to get out of the way. What's happening? Is he going to die? Oh, shit, everything's going bad. But then he's victorious. I just feel like even if you've got those tools, you've got that template, that's the story you're telling, there are better ways to connect with that material and tell that story. I just think it's tone deaf. And then he's got such an ego about it. He's the hero. He's like got this swagger. And then I just kept thinking, who the fuck is going to clean up after this mess? I know we watch a lot of movies where, superheroes destroy a city or whatever, and then they don't spend time cleaning up afterwards. But they're usually injured. They're usually like going back to recuperate or something. He's just like, oh, fuck it. Some Cuban poor person is going to have to go and clean up my mess. I'm going to go off and bang Michelle Rodriguez.
Sure, Michelle Rodriguez is thrilled.
Yeah, okay, let's talk about Vin Diesel for a second, because that's my biggest problem. I think he's really gross.
Yeah, I think he's gross too. I think when he was younger, he was less gross, but still a bit gross. He's getting grosser as he gets older.
I feel like, and look, I haven't... take this allegedly, you can do your own research to back it up. But I feel like rumours about him was that he was always a problematic person to work with right from the beginning. And I'm thinking specifically of Saving Private Ryan as a reference point to that he was someone that instantly thought he had more cachet than he did at that age and at that level of experience. What I don't like about him is we talked about Aubrey Plaza playing the same person. He literally plays the same person every time, from the things that he wears. Like, if you told me that if I watched Last Witch Hunter, Triple X, and this, and told me it was all the same, I would assume that it is all the same character. Like, there's nothing different about those characters at all, from the costume choices to the way he acts. And it's a real shame because and I don't know if it's because that's my argument with Aubrey Plaza was maybe that's the box that she's been put in. People go, well, that's what you do. That's what we're going to get you to do. But I feel like he's got far more pull than that. He's someone that's executive producers and things on these things. And I feel like he has the option. And he's never, to my knowledge, I mean, I'm not an expert on his filmography, but I certainly don't feel in recent years that he expands himself or makes fun of himself or does things to break himself out of that mold.
Well, if you're making bulk cash, not doing much, then why would you fucking change that mold?
From an artistic perspective,
I don't think we're really judging Vin Diesel as an artiste.
But why not? I mean, look at the other people in that film and what they have been able to accomplish. Like The Rock could just be a big grunting muscle man, but he's obviously not satisfied with that because he does a lot of comedy. He's singing in a Disney movie and he's fucking great. So, he can do all these things. Statham is someone, and I think Statham is quite good in this, comparatively. Also is someone that has that wink nudge to the audience throughout it. It's tongue-in-cheek, and he's someone that we've seen willing to make fun of himself. I don't think Vin Diesel has that capacity. I feel like it's almost contractual that Vin Diesel has to look cool because he's really insecure. This is a guy, but that's talking about his screen stuff, but this is a guy that even off the screen is that kind of douche that does interviews wearing sunglasses and chewing gum and hitting on the woman that's, this is a guy that thinks he is that character. And I find that really off-putting. And when characters in this film, whether it's Michelle Rodriguez or Charlize Theron, have to kiss him, I'm beginning to get that Tommy Wiseau kind of uncomfortable vibe where it just feels gross. And I just feel bad for them to have, even just when he's talking to them and his face is so close to them, I just think there's something really gross happening here.
Yeah, even the first scene where he's introduced with Michelle Rodriguez and he just has his chubby, lumpy arm around her. And I'm like, ooh, I bet it's hot there. I bet he's sweaty. And poor Michelle Rodriguez, she doesn't need that. She doesn't even like dudes. She definitely probably doesn't like that dude.
I never think about those things in film. They're usually quite invisible. But this is a film. It's the kind of thing where I think about those things. And my mind, I don't know, it's just my mind is wandering because, clearly this film's not for me. But I was thinking that with The Rock. I'm thinking, does The Rock smell just dominate the room? Because one or two things is happening. Because he is this huge, oily dude who's got his armpits at everybody's head level because he's always got his arms out. And I'm thinking either there is this kind of sweaty man smell everywhere or what I think is more likely is that he's got nice smelling oils and is pretty deodorant, but even then his smell is dominating that room.
The man smell.
Yeah, I feel like you just go, oh fuck, here come in all these exotic oils and stuff because one of those two things has to be happening. For those people.
He doesn't have underarm hair, so maybe you should remove that to be, to take the edge off a bit.
But isn't hair there, I'm not a biologist, isn't hair there in arms and armpits and pubic regions and stuff to filter odours?
Well, I don't know. Dudes have a lot of hair and they're way more stinky than ladies.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that I did enjoy this movie for what it was. I think it was a bit too long and it did take a little while to get going, but once those pieces that they'd all set up kind of hit into place. You said you didn't really like the third act. I did like the third act. I was ultimately satisfied with this movie as a Fast and the Furious franchise movie because I did think that the last one, for good reason, was a little bit muddled and a bit messy and didn't work quite as well as a lot of people were claiming it did. I think they're bringing a lot of their own kind of emotion into that last movie and the Paul Walker send-off and all that kind of thing. And I think the real thing with these movies is what your relationship is with them. It's not even about the movies anymore. And I think, your first one was the last one. And having seen two movies is like not having seen an Avengers movie before and then watching The Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I know.
And I know that they're not movies for you and they're not clever movies. But, I mean, if you're looking back 15 years ago when I was it was 2002 or whatever, I just come out of high school and And a lot of girls my age were watching these movies, and the cinema today was mostly women. Like, there was a big group of girls that came in, there were some other girls that came in, and I think 15 years ago to see a movie like this where your female characters were, they may not have been amazingly well written, but they were strong and they were on par with the men, and everyone apart from Paul Walker was, you know, of colour. And 15 years ago, that was huge. And to be able to carry those characters through and feel like you're not growing up with those characters, but having that as a base. And sure, they're dumb movies, but they were trying harder 15 years ago than anybody else was. And that's the relationship that a lot of people have with these movies. That if you're coming in later, you're not gonna have that, and you're gonna see them as dumb movies for stupid people.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
And I do. And I think I don't see them even as characters because there's no real character there for me. It's all one line. It's all boom, baby. Let's get, you know. And I said
that's
this
because everybody
about the
else has
last
had that
one.
relationship with them previously.
But a whole movie of just people doing one-liners like boom, baby, and that's my girl, and it's just all these, it's just cliches, one-liner cliches. So, I don't know, maybe they did all the character development in early ones, but they don't, I feel like, having seen the last one, I could have written this one and written those characters without seeing any of the other ones, because they don't really say anything that tells you anything. That said, let's break it down further, because I'm not going to say, oh, this is a stupid piece of shit, what a, you know, worst thing in my life, etc., because we get antsy when people do that, and I think that we want people to be better critics, so I've got to be a better critic than that. And you're 100% right when you say that it's about my relationship with the film, because I feel like it'd be silly to go, well, this is a piece of shit, it's a terrible movie, it doesn't work, because obviously, like you said, it works for a huge amount of people.
And there's a lot of, like, because you can say, well, it'd just be dumb people, Bogan's going to see it. There's a lot of smart, educated, movie-sensible people who are going, oh, I'm really looking forward to seeing Fast and the Furious, and I like those movies.
So people obviously have a connection, and they can relate to it. I can't relate to it. I've talked before about this idea of when you get into these movies that are sort of fantasy, power fantasy, those kind of movies, whether it's a superhero movie, a Bond movie, an action movie like this, I feel they all occupy a similar space. I feel like the success comes down to the relatability, how much you sort of feel like, oh, I can put myself in that situation. And I think that's why, you know, Iron Man is now surpasses something like Superman. I've said this before, because I don't think people want to be Superman. I don't think they want to wear that costume and have all that responsibility and be that guy. They want to be Tony Stark. They want to be James Bond. You know, I've heard people say, why isn't there a Phantom movie? Because no one wants to live in the jungle in a purple leotard. Like, it's that kind of thing. You've got to make it cool.
And that's the thing. Yet, you know, all of my friends that are like 18, 19, we're looking at Letty and going, fuck, she is amazing.
Yeah. And Marvel does this very well. It makes things cool. You might have read an old comic and gone, Black Panther, why do I want to be in the jungle in a cat mask? When you see his compound, you see his stuff, you see his team, you see his costume, you go, fuck, he's cool. Like, Black Panther is really awesome. So it's that sort of thing. And I can't find a way in with these characters. I don't want to be these characters. I don't want to hang out with these characters. I don't want to live in their world. I find them dumb and abrasive. They say... all of them say, like, family was a big word, ain't was a big word as well. Everybody says ain't and y'all, and they're all just like, and boom, baby, and all that sort of stuff. And, yeah, and, you know, I'd be first to admit that this is a personal thing. That's why, and that's what people need to... I know, I'd like to see people reflect on that more when they're talking about movies, rather than go, to bring up the grim spectre of Batman vs. Superman, well, this is a piece of shit. Identify what it is that you expect from something, that you want from something, that what blocked you from getting into it. Because I think in terms of the way it's made, it's a messy script, but why are we attacking Zack Snyder then? He didn't write the script. In terms of bringing those visuals from the page into the screen, I think he does a pretty fine job.
Yeah. And I think in terms of bringing your own baggage, I've been thinking a lot about Colossal during the week, which... I said that I wasn't really that interested in last week when I was talking about it. And the reason, like, after a few days of mulling over it, is that really I was very much blindsided by that twist.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a movie that men and women are probably going to watch quite differently, because there would be very few women who haven't experienced that in their lives. And that movie made me feel really shit after it. And so that was why I was like, I can't even fucking like think about this movie. And then a few days later I went, oh fuck, that's why. And you know, but that was on me. Like, that's not the movie. And I did say, you know, I wouldn't dissuade anyone from going to see it, but that's why I had the massive barrier with that movie.
And in my perspective, you could say the same thing in the sense that these are the sort of, like, if you imagine these characters in high school or whatever, those characters and me, we're not getting along. They don't like me.
Whereas I probably would have been on the fringes of that friends group.
Yeah, and there is that kind of indefensible sort of snobbishness which is coming into play with this for me, about these characters and about this world. So that's my biggest barrier. And also the fact that I feel like when I tend to dislike something, it's not because of CGI or MacGuffins or things, you know, I'm accepting all that sort of bullshit. It's usually because of the values that I find problematic. Something where it's, you know, here is a film that I think it believes that it has a really strong moral compass. I mean, it has all the characters saying grace at one point. And their belief systems are very inflexible. Like what these characters want, what they believe in, what they think is right. But at the same time, they murder so many people and are laughing about it. They're calling someone, even like The Rock, who's one of the most likable dudes in this, calls someone a bitch while stabbing them. And then just, you know, shakes it off. And then later on, you're going to all hold hands and thank God for your blessings. It's like, it's so hypocritical and problematic. And for me, it's like Ugly Americans, the movie. The way that they have British barbs at Statham about tea and crumpets and stuff, or there's one of the few sort of joke beats is about Russian language being funny. And it's like, is America at this point right now where you need friends right now? And that's the other thing I want to talk about, just in terms of the villain. And because look, ultimately, if you take all those prejudices or preconceptions aside from what I'm talking about, you've got a very, for me, run-of-the-mill action movie. And no one has pulled the wool over my eyes. It's exactly what the trailer promised. That's what it is. That's what you get. And as I said to you, I think that motorcade sequence, the action sequence sort of that is in the middle of this film, is fantastic. It's inventive. It's great. It's gripping. It's things you haven't seen before. It's a really good idea. Love that. And that's why the third act fell a little bit short for me, because I think the best sequence was that middle one. And for me, the same thing happened in the seventh, where that Dubai sequence is the memorable, inventive one, and then the final act is actually a little bit sort of scrappy and forgettable and isn't as clear. Like, I think we've talked about this before with action. The stakes have to be very defined. The flow of it, the sort of direction, the movement of it has to be very defined, and it has to be inventive. And I think this has one scene that really nails that. But when you look at Charlize Theron's villain and you think about this idea of what she wants to do and the danger to other countries and nukes and all that sort of stuff, you go, and this is no fault of the filmmakers at all. This is just a timing, unfortunate thing. But you go, Trump is more dangerous than her. Trump is doing crazier things than she is right now. So you're watching this movie where the villain is
wanting to hold all these world leaders accountable. It's like, but you're going to be bombing yourself, basically.
Yeah, he's less of a threat than the sitting president. And I thought, that's so interesting, because so many of these movies rely on government. We see presidents, US presidents in movies, fictional US presidents, and they tend to have a set of values and characteristics that are associated with them. And it's like, a movie's going to continue to do that even though there is a, like, circus clown doing crazy, like, childish, ignorant things in the White House? Or is the fiction going to start to challenge that or shape around that? Like, what is going to happen with this escapist fiction? Avengers, having done Civil War and all that sort of stuff, are actually so
Well-placed, yeah.
so lucky now to be going cosmic threat. The fact that they're going to get to move away from that entirely.
But I think even then they can just go, oh well, the government's all Hydra, so it's fine. They've got a back door that they can, go through that way if they need to.
Really struck me when she started to talk about what she really was going to do. I was like, well,
the movie would have been finished and wrapped by the time that all of that happened.
Absolutely. This was all set in stone before. But I was thinking, when you look at the headlines now, your own president, it's fucking crazier than you are, Charlize. You're like an amateur by comparison.
And her little gang of cyber hackers, it was like, did she just assemble the team of people with the worst hair?
Yeah, I think so.
And a moment
so that she didn't look like she had the worst hair.
Yeah, and I loved, and I wonder if this was almost a Vin Diesel thing, going, you know what, I'm going to need to beat somebody up in this movie, and I'm going to, break his neck or whatever. And I was like, who the fuck, who is really tough that is going to make me feel good about beating him up? And that is Tormund Giantsbane.
Yeah.
It was so great. Oh, I didn't realise
nice to see him.
I didn't realise I'd missed his wild ginger face.
I do want to say, though, and this has become a new obsession of mine, which I've mentioned in previous podcasts, this idea of what are actors actually being called in to do. And not many of them did anything for a big action movie. Most of the action is cars, but really, all these guys did, they were either talking in bunkers or they were sitting in the seats of cars yelling out one-liners. But, they're not Donnie Yen. They're not really doing much.
No, they're not. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you do have to be a little bit realistic about what these movies started as and what they still are. They're car porn and they are inventive car stunts. Like, the amount of practical effects that is going on in these movies, like, I couldn't even fathom setting up for something like this and knowing that you probably only have one shot at a lot of these things. Like, that's a different area of filmmaking that I have, no knowledge about, but a hell of a lot of appreciation for.
And it's a real shame in a way, because you tend to assume, I think, as a modern cinema goer, that, it's, CGI is easy, yeah, but they just do that, and there's been so many instances where I think people are surprised when you do see behind the scenes stuff and you go, oh shit, they did that. I remember feeling that with the first Transformers movie, when you watch when you go, they are picking up a car on a crane and smashing it down like a foot in front of Shia LaBeouf, whereas I just think, oh yeah, no, he's on a green screen, it's all fine. And you go, no, they're not. And, as much as people like to complain about CGI, most audiences really don't know what the fuck is going on, which is good. I mean, you want things to be invisible. Wow, all right. Oh, I know there's one other thing that I wanted to mention. We know that he goes bad. Yeah. I'm not going to spoil anything about all that, because I think that's the only thing that, people are sort of excited about. But at the early on, Charlize gives him a phone to look at, and he gets to look at something. We don't see what it is. And that's the catalyst. We know now he's going to go and have to join that team because of what he sees on that phone. I encourage future YouTubers to have some real fun with that moment and edit in what he saw on that phone. Might have been The Last Witch Hunter.
Maybe.
Yeah. Plans for a Last Witch Hunter sequel. And that went, for fuck, better put this to bed. Though I like to think it was him in the shower with like a steroid-abused micro-penis, buffing his head, farting and singing, oops, I did it again. And he was just like, yeah, I'm going to have to go against my family.
Yeah, I can't have this on the internet.
For this one. Yeah, micro-penis windmilling. So not for me, but obviously there are people that are really into... I mean, there was a midnight screening. That shows you how. These things make... This will be one of the highest... It'll be in the top 5 easily movies of the year, gross-wise. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way they finish it... I mean, there's going to be a sequel. They'll keep coming back. They will keep making these movies as long as people keep coming to see them.
As long as people have families and hearts.
Yeah.
And souls.
And no hair.
and forget that what happened to Bob Walker.
Never forget.
Never fast and the never fuck it. All right. So yeah, that's a big one. It's good though, isn't it? Because sometimes some things we see and you like them and you just go, well, yeah, that was good. And it's not much of a review. It's not much of a discussion, but
Hey there, Lego Batman.
yeah, but there's some meat in there.
Yeah, and I guess Fast and the Furious is a good movie in terms of, it's more about you than it.
It's a cultural
A lot of the way,
phenomenon, isn't it? It's which becomes one of those things that once you get past a certain level, it's kind of...
Yeah, it's like some people, they're just like, I'm not into Star Wars, and there's no point trying to fight with them. It's just not for them, and then...
they see it all as being the same, and they don't like the characters.
Yeah.
And it's the same with this, and also because of this sort of... I don't know, like production line they've got on these films, and again, I feel like if you're just going to round up the actors every year to spend a few days sitting in a car seat going boom baby, then you can churn them out reasonably quickly. If you don't like this one, there'll be another one. It's expensive TV. It's an expensive dumb TV show with a new long episode coming out. Once every 2 years, essentially.
Yeah.
So more. Power to them, I guess. Yeah. There we go. I've sort of hit the hour, but
we've got a little bit more to go on.
We want to talk about it? Yeah,
go for it.
All right. Well, I guess the only other thing with them would be: are there any sort of international shows or movies that you've taken in?
I caught up on a Korean TV show that I think was from the end of last year, and it's called Hwarang. And it is sort of like a period drama comedy kind of thing about an orphan kid that he's a peasant. He goes into the capital city area where he's not meant to be, and kind of gets adopted by this family, and then ends up being joining this group of bodyguards that have been set up for the king. And for whatever reason, these bodyguards are all very handsome young men. And this is a real thing. I actually looked it up, and Hwarang was a real thing that was put together as a squad of bodyguards. And, it's silly, it's for teenagers, and they're very, very good-looking young Korean boys wearing, the long hair and the long robes and all of that sort of thing. But, it's pretty good fun. Well, Siri's just woken up. What you
did
doing,
this
bro?
thing again. I'm just wondering what piqued Siri's interest this time.
I don't know. Maybe he's going, Hwarang, stop talking about fucking Korean shit. You're always watching Korean shit. So I'm only about halfway through it. It's entertaining. I'm quite enjoying it at the moment. I think sometimes the problem with Korean dramas is they don't always stick the landing. The last episodes, the finales are not always that great. But I'm enjoying it for now.
Do people remember the trailer for Guardians, which was the Russian superhero movie, kind of like an Avengers? And the thing that will jog your memory if you've seen this is there's a guy that turns into a bear, sort of a bear man with big machine guns and stuff. I saw that. I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's a very sort of familiar plot line, kind of an Avengers feel, get the team back together and assemble everybody and then go out against a bad guy. And the bad guy can control machines, which is actually interesting because then that puts forward the argument to, well, let's get sort of genetically modified superpowered people because otherwise all our tanks and planes and missiles and everything like that aren't going to be much good against him. And the trailer was pretty bonkers, and this thing does have a lot of action, and it has some cool costumes and some cool characters and some certainly interesting enough action sequences to watch. My criticism of it would be that it is just feels completely humorless unless there's some sort of subtleties there that I'm just not picking up on. It is so po-faced and takes itself so seriously that it lacks the fun that it would need to become that sort of cult thing where you go, oh, you got to watch this. You know, sit down and watch this with me. We're going to have a great time, because it's just too leaden, even though it's got a bear man. So yeah, that wasn't much. And I did start watching If You Are the One after your recommendation last time, and have enjoyed the hell out of that. And I wanted to raise, it's an interesting point, and if anybody out there has a background which could fill us in on this, I'm fascinated by the cultural differences, particularly the sorts of questions that are asked. You know, this person has an opportunity to ask somebody a question, and what they choose just to me seems like, wow. Like, you know.
I was one the other day, and they get to choose the questions from the board or whatever to find out the girl's answers, and it's like, do you do housework? And stuff like that. It's like, oh, really?
Yeah, well, we're talking about this. If people didn't hear last week, they're talking about the dating show.
Yep. It's a Chinese dating show,
Yeah.
which is very, very popular here
Hugely
in Australia.
popular, and 50 million viewers an episode, apparently, worldwide. The thing that really got me is just how serious it can be, this date. Like, there was this guy, he was... he called himself the something god, and he was a stock market dude, and he was very, very arrogant. And they were all like, you're an arrogant prick. I'm going to keep my light on for you, though, because
you're strong.
I'm interested.
And you're going to make money because you're an a-hole. Yeah.
And someone got out their phone and Googled him or whatever, and found some information on him, and then said, oh, there's this other article here about this share god guy who... was with this girl, but he was too stingy or something. And he's like, oh, no, that's not me, and all this sort of stuff. And then they started talking about, oh, well, normally the woman manages the finances in a relationship and all this sort of stuff. He ends up getting a date, but when they're sitting on the couch with their little heart-shaped pillow talking about it, she's like, I'm just thinking, like, going forward, if we do this, that I maybe will manage my own finances and that you would manage your own finances. And he's like, I'm thinking that maybe you don't touch a cent of my money, and maybe that would be best. And I was just thinking, can you imagine any sort of like Western dating show that we're familiar, which is normally the complete opposite, this idea of, oh, we're going to go party, we're going to go drink, but like thinking about their future finances as a couple.
Oh, yeah. And
or their future children.
Yes. Yeah. They're like, how are the children going to be educated?
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And it's like, wow. And the thing is with these girls, like once they leave the show, they're not coming back on the show. So they've got this like lazy Susan of men that are just coming around, and they've got to pick one that they really like, because they're not coming back on.
But then by the same token, I think how much like... do we read into this? Because we know that our reality TV shows, that American reality TV shows, are very manufactured or have a sort of kind of cheesiness to them, which doesn't reflect how people really are. So, but then our bias seems to be you watch something and go, oh, well, that's that culture, that's what that's like. But then would we want someone to watch Home and Away and go... oh, well, that's Australia. That's what Australians are like. And even as I'm saying that, I know that there are still truths in there. There is a certain... and it's probably very relatable to some people, but at the same time, it's still a fiction. So I'm just curious about that as to how much it reflects things. And one other thing I wanted to say as we were talking about diversity and this idea this year of watching more things internationally. We've talked before... in all manner of contexts about the dumbing down of the world. It comes up in Book Was Better all the time. America hates smart people. This idea that the world is getting stupider. And we talked about idiocracy and that idea of just the dumb people keep having kids while the smart people are career focused, and the world gets dumber and dumber because we don't value intelligence. And what I'm realizing is that's such Western-centric view that is really a narrow view shaped by Australian, American, particularly culture, that we're like just as guilty of it in a way. It's just that America's bigger and has more of a presence. Whereas what I love about watching some of these Korean shows, Chinese shows, is that they do value intelligence. They do value that sort of success, and if you're ignorant or you haven't reached your potential or you haven't taken advantage of things,
you're
and you
very
haven't
much looked down upon.
So That it should be obvious, but that's a really good step for me in a way. Like, if you think, well, what's apart from going, oh, we watched this funny Chinese dating show, and it is funny.
I love Grandpa Meng. He makes me laugh so much.
But you just go, well, a lot of these perceptions we have about the world are very narrow because they're not taking into account the values that other people that we're not familiar with have. And like you go, oh, well, you know, people are proudly ignorant. And you go, no, only in like our culture and like American culture. And then probably, so you go, well,
white people are so comfortable that they just get to be stupid.
Yeah. And
they don't feel they need to do anything to progress.
Yeah. And they fight. Yeah. Because I always get angry when you hear that thing where someone goes, oh, what's that? I don't know what that is. Therefore, it must be stupid, or it's not a real thing, or it's, you know, why would I care about that? Or what's the, as opposed to having any sort of curiosity about, well, okay, tell me about that. What's that about? Let me understand that. You know, we're so quick to dismiss things. So I thought that was really interesting that harkens back especially to like that Korean reality game show, The Genius, that I saw, where, you know, it was just so great to watch smart people be smart and that there was a value put on that, which doesn't happen often here. There we go. All right. And I just very briefly wanted to say, while I've been on holiday, I've been watching things with a very specific shared theme. I saw People vs. O.J. Simpson, which I watched because of all the awards buzz when that was happening. That led me to going into non-dramatization, and I watched Making a Murderer and The Jinx, and then finally listened to Serial podcast. And got me just so wrapped up in this whole idea of guilt and innocence and the justice system and just huge amount of things that I'd love to talk about and think about. So I don't know, I'm maybe sort of putting it out there that if anybody has been like invested in the same things and is interested in the same things, that maybe that's a talk that could happen at some point, maybe as a bonus or something like that, because certainly even just like something like Serial I would love to really break down, because I've got a lot of thoughts about that, and I don't know if I've got the popular opinion on that either. But those real crime things, which isn't a genre I've ever been interested in at all, really got me interested, and then I just wanted to devour more. I also watched the 13th, that documentary, and the documentary Amanda Knox, which is also about someone being committed and then acquitted for a murder. So even if you're just on our Facebook group and you have any recommendations of other things that someone who watched those things and loved, The Jinx was crazy and had a very, very powerful, memorable last episode. So anything that sort of matches up to that might interest me, I'd love to hear your recommendations. And I do mean to I got to mention Kenny briefly, shout out, hey dude, I will watch Banshee when I get a chance as well. That seemed like a really good recommendation. I've heard people sing its praises, and I did watch like the beginning of the pilot, but then I got caught up by something else, so it's something I need to take the time to look at, but it was definitely a recommendation that piqued my interest. All right. Anything you wanted to add?
Oh, God, no. This show's massive. We need to wrap it up.
All right.
Wrap it up like a Christmas present.
Like a little burrito. Happy bunny face day things. We're doing this on Easter Sunday. Easter Bunny didn't leave me anything this year.
No, I got some. I said to the Easter Bunny that I didn't really want chocolates this year. So Easter Bunny bought me some pop vinyls, which is pretty nice.
Which I did drink a bottle of wine and ate a chocolate rabbit last night. So that's something.
Okay.
So thanks, everybody. You can find out what we're doing at fruitlesspursuits.com. Book was better, should be back. I haven't read the book yet, but I'm going to. We're going to record it tomorrow. Jacinta's going to be joining me for that one. And it will be Highlander, a film that I don't believe either of us have actually seen.
No, I'm going to have to watch that tonight.
Which is weird, because it's a cult classic. And yeah, you can also find links to the aforementioned Facebook group where you can talk about stuff. Like us, leave reviews, iTunes, wherever else you get podcasts. Do all those wonderful things for us. And also there's links to our Patreon if you are like the Monopoly Man or something like that. You've got some rattling money bags too heavy to carry. So thanks everyone. And
Yeah.
catch you next time.
Yeah.
There won't be another Camelot, not another Camelot.